working. Good morning. This is the Flat Cap Cafe Racer. I'm out on a Sunday morning ride right before I join Time to Go in one of his live views a little bit later this afternoon. I'm going to talk just a little bit today about something Mr. Bill and I have talked about. Mr. Bill is getting ready for his retirement. He has been for a while, and occasionally we talk at night. There are probably 5 things that over the years, after before I retired, speaking to a lot of the retirees that are 75 to 80 years old, what they told me of their regrets. So I'm going to tell you 5 of those things. First off, if you're old enough to remember sodas in a bottle, when television used to sign off at night at 12 o'clock at night, and you had 3 channels only, and you had little rabbit ears to adjust those channels. If you remember bomb shelters, if you had somebody in your family that had an outhouse, or you had a party line. A party line, for you don't know, is where 7 to 8 people are on the same phone line, and they know it's the phone's for them, depending on how many rings it is. Yeah, they used to have such thing. If you went to a library to do your research instead of Google, if you're old enough to remember some of those things, perhaps you should be already retired. But the very first thing and most common thing for motorcyclists I talked to over the years regarding, retirement and regrets is they almost all mention they wish they'd retired sooner, so they had more time to do those things that they've put off over the years doing. The other part is they wish they'd taken better care of their health. When you get dodgy knees, or you get a bad back, something like that, or you get numbness in your fingers, arthritis, gout, or you just get tied to a doctor and you can't do these things anymore. Once you get to be 75 or 80, that's you're not gonna get a whole lot better than that. So if you're gonna get into retirement, for me, I'm 11 years into my retirement. I retired at 60 years old. And if you wait till you get 75 to 80 before you start doing some of these things, it's going to be too late. For some of you in your 60s, it may be getting a little late because you have a chronic condition. So one of the first regrets I said is not retiring early enough. I haven't run into anybody over the years that says, "Hey Jerry, I wish I'd have hung in on that job for 3 or 4 more years." Never have happened yet. I guess kind of going along with one of those, number 3 is they wish they had spent the money a little bit earlier. So sometimes you wait. You wait to spend your money to in your 70s on that motorcycle, and then it turns out because your health you can't do it. You can't, it's too late. You're better. You can travel. You got better wheels when just because when you're 60 you can do something doesn't mean when you're 75 you're going to be able to do the same thing. You ought to do those things when you can, when it allows you, when your health allows you to do that. Spend the money, go do and it kind of goes into one of the four things is travel. Almost everybody regrets they didn't travel more. Because quite honestly, because if your health doesn't get you, it'll be your health sometimes when you get into your 70s, mid-70s, 80s, you just don't want to do stuff. You just don't feel like doing it. It's kind of like one of these GoPro batteries on a cold winter day. You just don't last very long. So it's always in your best interest to do that earlier and get in your travel, spend your money, retire a little bit earlier. If you're 65, that's probably about as late as you want to get on your retirement. And one of the other things is a lot of regrets people don't have motorcycle riders have had is they didn't start their hobby. They always wanted to ride a motorcycle, but because of family or whatever, was they had to work, those long hours, those 12-hour days, and they didn't have time for a hobby because they're raising their kids or whatever. Motorcycle is one of those, I think it's a perishable skill that you can start later in life, but you really can't. Starting to ride a motorcycle 70 years old is not a good idea. You can do it. There's some people that can do it. There's some people that that should never be on a motorcycle. They can't drive. But if you're going to have a hobby, with motorcycles in your hobby, you probably need to start it earlier and get better care of yourself. Get some exercise. It's just hard to work those joints and things like that. If your shifting foot doesn't work or you get Parkinson's or something like that, you just don't know what's going to come around the corner. You're not guaranteed anything. That's just my take on this. So if you're just now getting into retirement, you just retired a few years ago, you need to keep those things in mind. If you're coming up on retirement, you need to keep those things in mind. Because they affect not only motorcycles, but they affect pretty much everybody into retirement. This motorcycling has to be our hobby. And, there's some bikes that once you get a little older, you can't ride anymore. I mean, they get too heavy or your balance gets a little bit off. Now you're limited to a sidecar, you're limited to a Spider, if you can get those. So this is my thoughts on out here today. I was talking to Mr. Bill, and of course Mr. Bill's already blew past the first one, retired earlier. And I don't know if he's going to, the rest of them or not, but think about Mr. Bill. Join me and my friends at Flat Cap Cafe Racer for riding and racing. Please subscribe.